So let's go for it. In Mark 8, Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. And on this way, he asked his disciples some questions. Now, this walk that they're getting ready to take is about probably anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5 hours, depending on how fast you're walking, and if you're with a group and stuff like that, right? It might take a little bit longer. And so they were taking kind of an all-day trip, right? And so Jesus is in this group of his really the word is Talmudim. Talmudim means student. So I think we've lost some of the translation there in calling them disciples. Most of these, his Talmudim were young. They were probably not full-grown men, some of them. We always see like the movies, right? And Peter's like a 35-year-old fisherman, right? With lots of facial hair. There are probably disciples, Talmudim, of Jesus that were probably in their teens. These were very young students that were learning from their rabbi. That's what is happening here. This is exactly what is happening here. And as Jesus is walking, the rabbi is walking with his Talmudim, his students, he begins to ask questions. Now that is not very out of the comfort zone of what a rabbi would do. What rabbis to this day will do with their students is ask them questions, constantly asking questions. And so Jesus, as he's walking with his students, he says, who do people say that I am? This is one of the questions that he asks. Who do people say that I am? And so they begin to answer. And so one says, well, John the Baptist. It's like, okay, that's weird because there's a guy that is John the Baptist. But all right, he's my cousin. But okay, they think that I'm John the Baptist, all right. What do others say? Others say, well, Elijah. Okay. Well, there's some understanding for that because in the Old Testament Hebrew Bible, there's talk of that Elijah would be the forerunner to a messianic type of person. And so they said Elijah. And then others will say that you're one of the prophets. And so please understand that this is a long conversation. We're getting a very, very, very small snippet of what was happening here. I would assume, and I think it would be good for us to assume, that this was a conversation that took a while. They might have been talking about this particular question and the answers for maybe 30, 40, maybe an hour-long time. And they're saying, well, some people say John the Baptist. And they're like, oh, yeah, I've heard that. You know, and then Philip says, well, I've heard that people, call you John the Baptist. And I bet maybe some of them laughed at that. And he said, that's kind of weird, like we just did. It's like, well, there's a guy that really is John the Baptist, so why do they say that? And I was like, I don't know why they say that. That's kind of weird that they say that, but they say that. And it's like, well, other people say that you're other prophets. Maybe you're Isaiah, maybe you're Elijah, maybe you're Elisha, maybe you're... And they're like, wow, that's interesting. And so they begin to talk through these answers. It's causing them to think about what have they heard about this rabbi that they follow, this guy named Jesus from Nazareth. What do people say about me? And so they begin to answer this question. And they talk about it. They go back and forth. And then Jesus, towards the end of that time, because he's heard a lot of this stuff, he said, but who do you say that I am? Now, we've gone from a different level now here. We've gone from, what are other people saying about me? What are you hearing? What do you think about that? And then he says, well, who do you say that I am? And Peter, always the first one to jump into the fray, right? He's the guy that jumped out of the boat to walk on water. Peter's the one who is the first to deny Jesus, right? I mean, Peter's always the first. And Peter says, you're the Messiah. And Jesus sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about this. Now, I want to say something real fast here. There's just a little quick study of this. The word Messiah for them, Messiah, is kind of a different word than what we kind of think of when we think Messiah. When 21st century Christians think of the word Messiah, we think of one person, right? We kind of think of Jesus Christ is the Messiah, right? Well, in the Jewish tradition, in this time of Jesus, there had already been different messiahs, and there were going to be different ones. There were going to be different messiahs. Messiahs were not like, it wasn't the idea of there's only one true Messiah and there never can be another one. The idea of the Messiah for them was someone that was a savior for that moment. Someone who was like a great leader or a king, if you will. It was someone who was politically and religiously motivating and charismatic and could come into a situation where the people of Israel had been in trouble and a Messiah could show up and deliver them. All right? Now, we can look back on those prophetic words from the Hebrew prophets, if you will, or the Hebrew poets, like Isaiah and Hosea and Micah, and we can project that onto Jesus and say they were talking about the Messiah. But they were just talking about a Messiah most of the time. They were talking about somebody who was going to be in that moment and deliver them politically from the trouble that they were having. Are you following me? Yes. So, when Peter says, "You're the Messiah," Jesus then says, "Oh, don't, let's not say that." And I think the reason that Jesus is saying that is because he understands the political charge to that name. Are you with me? And this is early on in the ministry of Jesus. And I think Jesus is actually saying, you know what? Let's not create too much of a stir before I can do everything that I need to do here on earth. Are you with me? Now that might sound weird to you. That might sound like, well, why would Jesus care about that? Why would he? But I think that Jesus lived in the day that Jesus lived in. And I think he was aware of the culture that he was in. And so when Peter said, "You're the Messiah," Jesus like, okay, well, let's tone down that talk for a little bit. Are you with me? All right? But Jesus, so I think what Peter is saying is not necessarily, "You're the one true living God, the Messiah of God that has always been." I think he's saying, "You're the one who's come to deliver us from Rome. You're going to build an empire, a kingdom that will go against Caesar, and we're going to fight." Remember, even at the moment where Jesus is getting ready to die in the garden, Peter's the one who took out the sword and cut off the guard's ear. He was ready for a battle. And so when he says, "You're the Messiah," Jesus is like, "Well, Peter, maybe not the way you think." Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed. And after 3 days, then he would rise again. He said all this quite openly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Now, why would Peter begin to rebuke him if he believed that he was the Messiah? He was rebuking him because he thought he was the Messiah that had come to deliver them from Rome. And then Jesus begins to say, first of all, he says, "Don't say that." Secondly, he says, all of the things that are going to happen that are going to destroy him, he's going to be killed. And Peter's like, "Jesus, come on. You need to stop talking like this." Okay? Because that's not a great way to build consensus. Like, we've got a political movement here, an opportunity to go after Caesar, and you're like, "Well, look at what's going to happen to the Son of Man. He's going to be given over by the elders, the chief priests. He's going to be rejected. He's going to be killed." And Peter's like, "Listen, you need to stop that talk. You're the Messiah." And Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan." This is where the original meaning, "not today, Satan," came from. Okay, this is where... Thanks for 2 people for it. That's where it's... And the word Satan, okay, let's talk about that. The word Satan, does anyone know what that means? Anyone? No? It means, what is it? It means the accuser. That's what the Satan means. It means the accuser. You've heard of the accuser of the brethren, right? That famous phrase. So the accuser. And so Peter says, Jesus, don't say this stuff about yourself. And he says, get behind me. You're an accuser. And he says, you're setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. All right? You see that? And so then he goes on. And let's go to the next. He called the crowd then with his disciples. And he said, if anyone wants to become my followers, let him deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it. Those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save their real life. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world but forfeit their life, their soul? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Is that it? Is that the last one? Or do we have anything else? Those who are ashamed of me, of my words, in this adulterous temple generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed, and comes to his glory of his Father and holy angels. All right, now, let me ask you a question. I think that in a thing that we call question everything, is it would be good to start with some questions. Do you think that questions are good or bad? They're good. Everybody was like, you were pretty much right on that. You're good. They're good. Okay. Why are questions good?
Helps you think.
It helps you think.
Clarify.
It helps clarify. It challenges you in what you already believe. Absolutely.
It challenges others.
It challenges others. Absolutely. What else? Anything else? Those are all good. So those are good things. We're saying that being challenged in our own beliefs, and it helps to clarify, it helps to make more clear what is going on. All right, so questions are good. We would say questions are good. Why do you think Jesus asked questions so much then? Like in this situation, and in many situations, have you noticed that a lot of times when Jesus is talking to someone and they'll come to him and they'll ask him a question, how does he answer? With a question, right? Why would he do that? So there is a teaching and a learning process, are you with me, that happens within the question. Like the first thing that I said was that this was very common for a rabbi to be walking with his students and to be asking questions. To this day, did you know that to this day, rabbis, when they are with their Talmudim and they're studying their Holy Scripture, that the form that most of them take, like right now, for example, I'm in seminary. And so we have a certain way that professors teach and lecture, and then we answer questions, and we kind of go back and forth, and we say what we think. All right. In the rabbinic tradition, it is a place where usually you stand up, and a rabbi will begin to teach something or read something from Scripture, and then the rabbi will ask a question, and then literally the students will begin to yell back at each other and argue with each other and question each other. And somebody will say, well, this is what it meant when Joel said this. Or like, oh, that's not at all. Why would you say that that's what Joel's trying to say? Because Joel's trying to say this. You're like, oh, but if you look at Joel, and then Rabbi Hillel said of Joel that it was referring back to Elijah. And why would Elijah say that? Because that's not at all what Joel's saying. So how can you know that that's what, well, how do you know that that's what Elijah meant? Because Elisha said this. And when Elisha said this is what happened to Elijah. And so they go back and forth. And there's this argument. There's these questions. And all of it comes out of the form of the rabbi setting the goal with questions. Asking questions. And the question is a it's kind of an intrusive thing, isn't it? When somebody asks you a question, even this morning, Catherine got up and she was talking about creativity, and she asked us a question. She said, what is it that you love that you feel like you're creative in? And did you notice how many people answered? None. Well, you might have thought so. questions? Rejection? Absolutely.
You want to sound stupid.
We don't want to sound stupid. I don't want to say that, I feel like my creativity really comes out in Snapchat.
But it does.
I mean, if that's my go-to, somebody else is like, well, I read Russian poetry. You're like, oh, well, I feel stupid. I should Snapchat. And so it's interesting that we didn't answer for ourselves. We kind of answered for other people. Are you with me? Why? Because the question makes me struggle. It makes me uncomfortable. The question puts me on the spot. And that's exactly what Jesus does here. He says, what are people saying about me? Oh, they were ready to go for that, weren't they? Well, they say this, and some people say this, and other people, I've heard people say this, and I've heard people say that. And everybody's just, whoa, we got all kinds of answers. Who do you think I am? Peter, of course, like, I got this one, guys, Peter's just hilarious. So anyways, he's like, I know. And then like a few minutes later, Jesus is like, get behind me, Satan. Something's wrong when Jesus calls you Satan, right? So, you've answered the question wrong. But the question puts you on the spot. It makes you have to think about, well, who am I and how do I fit into this world? What does this story mean and how do I fit into the story? Well, yes, I understand that this is what other people say and other people think and other people are doing, but who do you say that I am? That's a weird place to be. It's like, well, I'd rather answer for what other people think, for what other people say. But a good rabbi is always going to put you on the spot. And the rabbi doesn't necessarily tell you what to believe. Hello? The rabbi necessarily doesn't tell you what to believe. Here's the right answer. And when you get the test, please regurgitate that right answer back on the paper for me. No, he says, what do you think? How do you feel about that? And then he begins to tell parables of there's this guy, he's going down the road to Damascus, and he gets beat up, and he's left for dead. And a priest walks by. A Levite walks by. And then a Samaritan walks by. The Samaritan finds him, picks him up, and binds up his wounds, takes him into town, gives money to the guy, and says, I'll come back at the end of the week and make sure he's okay. And then he asks them, who's the real neighbor of the man that got beat up? Well, I don't want to have to say Samaritan, because Samaritans are people that we don't like, yet the rabbi has put me in a conundrum. I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, because the guy who was neighborly was the guy who helped, but I don't want to say it was a Samaritan, because that's going to question everything that I believe about what this rabbi is saying. Are you with me? It challenges me. It makes me wonder. It makes me doubt. I mean, we can't doubt if we're Christians, can we? Is doubt good? Oh, are you sure? But isn't it what James says, that a double-minded man should not ever ask anything in prayer? For that man will not receive anything. Because he has doubt. He has worry. Maybe that's not what James is saying. What do you think James is saying?
He's wrong.
Maybe James is wrong. Oh, so now you're like, well, I can't believe today at church somebody said James might be wrong. It's the infallible, inerrant word of God. Who would ever question it? Well, who would question it? Maybe a rabbi. Are you guys with me? Now, listen, I'm not trying. This might, for some of you, be a stretch, but I'm glad it is. Because questions are the things that cause us turmoil. See, American Christians don't want questions. We want certitudes. We want platitudes. We want answers. What's the answer? Israel just give me the answer. And he goes off and he spins it on fast living and fast women. Ends up in a pig pen, says, I'd rather just be a slave in my dad's house. Goes back to his dad's house. The father sees his son a long way off and runs to his son and puts a robe on him and says, kill the fatted calf, we're going to party. My son who was once lost is now found. They have a big, huge party, and that night, outside of the big tent party, there is an elder brother who is outside seething and frustrated. And the father comes out again looking for that son now and finds him sitting outside of the party saying, what's wrong? And that son says, I've always been here, done everything you've ever asked me to do. You've never even killed a dumb little goat for me. But now this son, who squandered his inheritance, goes off and then comes back. And you kill a fatted calf. And you have a huge party. I can't believe that you would treat him this way. While I have been loyal to you from day one. And the father says, son, everything that is mine has always been yours. Please come in to the party and rejoice. And that's the end of the story. God doesn't say, you are like the younger son. He doesn't say, you are like the older son. He just tells a story and he says, who do you think you are? In this story, Jesus asks some very important questions. He says something like, you can gain everything but lose your soul. What does that profit? Well, it profits something because a lot of people do it. It pays off somehow, doesn't it? That's a good question to ask yourself. How about this question? Not, what do other people say about me? What do you say about me? Is there a right answer? Is there a wrong answer? Or is there just where you are right now and what that means to you and to your God and to what the divine is doing, showing up in your life at this moment? I think that's what God is asking. I think that's what Jesus is asking. Who do you say that I am? Well, that's uncomfortable. Good luck answering that question. Let's stand.